Behind every story lies a strength, a quiet passion that isn't always seen but is felt in every word and moment. Today's story reminds us of that power. Here are some words to inspire courage and resilience. The knock on my door. It was a quiet Saturday morning. The sun spilled through my kitchen window, catching the golden leaves of the massive oak tree in my front yard. I had grown up with that tree. My father used to tell me stories under its shade, and my son had learned to climb its branches. It wasn't just a tree. It was a part of our family history. Then came the knock. It wasn't friendly. 3 sharp, rapid bangs. When I opened the door, there she was, Mrs. Jenkins, the HOA president. Her eyes scanned me like I was already guilty of something. She clutched a bright yellow paper and wasted no time. "This," she said, waving it in my face, "is an official HOA notice. Your oak tree does not comply with our neighborhood landscaping standards. It blocks the street view and creates a mess. You have 7 days to have it removed. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $250. I stared at her, completely stunned. "Remove it? That tree is over 2 centuries old," I protested. She smirked. "Then it's long past, due to come down." And with that, she shoved the paper into my hand and turned away. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the yellow paper. The audacity, the arrogance. This wasn't just about a tree. It was about control. And if Mrs. Jenkins thought I was going to bow down to her HOA power trip, she was in for a very big surprise. The roots of history. That night, I sat at my dining table, staring out at the oak's dark silhouette against the moonlight. Every memory came flooding back. My father carving our family initials into the trunk when I was just a boy, my grandmother stringing lights through its branches every winter, the sound of leaves rustling like whispers on warm summer nights. This tree wasn't just mine. It had seen generations. It had stood during storms, droughts, and even a small fire in the 1920s. The next morning, I decided to dig into its history. I drove to the local library and started searching through the town's archives. Hours passed before I stumbled on something incredible. An old black-and-white photograph from 1890. There was my oak tree, already massive, standing tall in front of what used to be the first schoolhouse in our area. Then I found the jackpot, a document from the state's Department of Historical Preservation. The oak was officially recognized as a living historical monument, protected under state law. Cutting it down without a permit wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. I printed the document and made a few copies. My anger had now turned into something else, a quiet, steady confidence. Mrs. Jenkins thought she had me trapped. But now, I had the law on my side, and I was going to enjoy every second of what came next. 3 days later, Mrs. Jenkins returned, this time with 2 HOA board members at her side. She didn't bother with small talk. "Your 7 days are almost up. Have you scheduled removal?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked over to my kitchen counter, picked up a folder, and handed it to her. Inside was a printed copy of the state's Monument Protection Law, highlighted in bright yellow. She frowned. "What's this?" "That," I said calmly, "is proof that my oak tree is a legally protected historical monument. Touching it without authorization could result in a fine of up to $25,000 and potential criminal charges. I suggest you and your board familiarize yourselves with it before making threats." One of the board members flipped through the papers, his eyes widening. Mrs. Jenkins's face, however, turned red. "We'll review this," she muttered, before storming off. As they walked away, I couldn't help but smile. This wasn't over. People like Mrs. Jenkins didn't back down easily, but neither did I. Over the next week, the HOA tried everything. They sent letters claiming the tree was unsafe, hired a so-called arborist who conveniently declared it diseased without even touching it, and even left anonymous notes in my mailbox saying I was a bad neighbor for refusing to follow rules. But every time I responded with copies of the state law, plus a letter from a real certified arborist who confirmed the tree was in perfect health. Then they made their biggest mistake. One evening, I came home to find yellow tape around my yard and two men with chainsaws standing near the oak. I pulled out my phone, started recording, and called the police. By the time officers arrived, the men had already admitted Mrs. Jenkins had sent them. The cops were not amused. "Ma'am," one officer told her when she arrived, "you just violated state preservation law. This is now a criminal matter." Her face drained of color. The case went to a local court within weeks. The evidence was clear: recorded video, signed witness statements, and the state's own preservation documents. Mrs. Jenkins tried to argue that she was just following HOA policy, but the judge wasn't buying it. She was fined $15,000 for illegal interference, plus ordered to pay for damages and legal fees. The HOA itself had to issue a written apology to me, which was read aloud at the next community meeting. Standing there under the oak's sprawling branches that evening, I felt a wave of satisfaction. The tree would remain untouched for generations to come. And Mrs. Jenkins? She could only glare at me from across the street, powerless. As the wind rustled the leaves, I realized something. Sometimes the best revenge is simply standing your ground and letting the roots of history do the rest. After the court ruling, the neighborhood seemed calmer, at least on the surface. Mrs. Jenkins stopped knocking on my door, and the HOA's letters finally ceased. But I could feel it, the tension in the air. Every time I drove by, I saw curtains twitch. Whispers would die the moment I stepped into the street. Then one night, as I was taking out the trash, I heard a faint scratching sound near the oak. I turned on my flashlight and saw something that made my blood boil. Someone had carved deep gashes into the trunk, like they were trying to damage the tree from the inside. The next morning, I called a tree specialist. He confirmed it was a sabotage attempt. Someone had tried to inject chemicals to slowly kill it. Luckily, it wasn't too late to treat it. That's when I installed two hidden cameras facing the yard, infrared and motion sensitive. If Mrs. Jenkins or anyone else tried anything again, I would have them on tape. 2 weeks later, the cameras caught exactly what I feared. Mrs. Jenkins herself, sneaking into my yard at 2 a.m. with a large bottle and a drill. This time I didn't. Just call the local police. I sent the footage straight to my lawyer and the district attorney's office. When the DA reviewed the footage, things escalated fast. This wasn't just an HOA violation anymore. It was criminal vandalism of a protected state monument. Charges were filed immediately. Mrs. Jenkins was arrested in broad daylight. The entire neighborhood watched as she was led away in handcuffs. Some looked shocked. Others, well, let's just say I wasn't the only one who smiled that day. In court, she tried to claim she was removing dangerous fungus, but the lab tests from my arborist proved the tree was perfectly healthy until her little midnight visit. The judge didn't hold back this time. 90 days in county jail, a $25,000 fine, and a permanent restraining order forbidding her from coming within 200 feet of my property. The HOA, embarrassed beyond belief, voted her out as president. They even passed a new bylaw recognizing the oak tree as an official neighborhood landmark, ensuring no one could ever touch it again. That night, I sat under its branches, listening to the wind. The leaves whispered like they had for centuries, and I couldn't help but think the tree had stood through storms, fires, and even Mrs. Jenkins, and it was still here, strong, untouchable. Months passed since Mrs. Jenkins's arrest, and life in the neighborhood finally felt normal again. Kids played under the oak's shade, neighbors waved instead of whispering, and the constant stress of HOA threats faded into a distant memory. One crisp autumn morning, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee when a moving truck pulled up across the street. Mrs. Jenkins' house. She was finally moving out. I watched as she stepped outside,